Okay, everyone, can you hear me? Yes. I can't see you. Perfect. Thank you, Leah.
Good morning, Asta. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Eva, Egle. Still waiting. Egle to be seen. Perfect. So, Egle Meta, Emma is our host. I believe we can start. We have some other attendees. These are students from the course. We have some other attendees for young researchers training from other universities. However, I believe they will join us a couple of minutes later. And for now, we start. And I'm very much pleased to introduce Professor Irene Georgescu, distinguished professor for management and economics, as well as digital healthcare. She has a lot of diverse responsibilities, so I believe that Irene could mention also her achievements in research and education. But in general, we are very lucky that Irene agreed to give us a lecture on critical thinking, logic, and everything that is needed around that for PhD students. So the outline of today is guest lecture by Irene. I believe as it's a couple of us around the table, so we can introduce ourselves for Irene to know with whom she is dealing. And later on, the floor will be Irene, and probably Irene could present the agenda she prepared for us. So as all of you know me, I will not take time to present myself, but maybe we can start with Yulia, Agle, Eva, and Nizar, shortly presenting yourself and especially research interests. So Yulia, could you start, please?
Yeah, okay. So hi, everyone. How are you? I'm Yulia. I'm a PhD student here at KTU, the first year PhD student, and my research topic is related to the idiosyncratic deals and how they relate to occupational stress. So it's the field of management, and my biggest interest in the research, I guess, is the interdisciplinary approach to it. So for me, it's interesting how we can, logically integrate different kind of sciences in the one research. So shortly, that would be.
Thank you. Agle?
Hello, my name is Agle Meta. I'm the first year student here in the PhD studies in the management field, and my research is about the responses of firms to global value chain disruptions. And it is something that I'm very interested in. That's all. Thank you.
Eva?
Hello, so my name is Eva. I'm a first year PhD student, and my research interest is digital implications in human resources management and their influence for various stakeholders.
And Nizar?
Yeah, hello, I'm Nisar Ahmed, and I'm first year PhD student, and my research topic is digitalization and health information system. And I am student of Professor Asta. That's it. Thank you.
So this is about us, and Irene, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Asta. So I'm very happy to spend a couple of hours with you about critical thinking and logical thinking. So maybe, is it possible to share my screen? Yes. So we will do, I would say, some exercise, and it will be an interaction courses, so do not hesitate to interrupt me if you have any question. But the main idea of these 3 hours is to try to train your brain to go beyond traditional perception. So I will put the diaporama in good condition like that. Okay, so everybody see my screens?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yes, Professor Ken.
Great. So the purpose of the lecture is the following. Firstly, the idea is to understand what critical and logical thinking are, what they are not, and why it is important to use it in research. This is the first point. The second point is to try to develop by a training, and you will be trained during this lecture, an appropriate process of thinking critically. And you will see that everybody can develop, in fact, this type of skills based on certain, I would say, individual characteristic, individual skills. And at the end, the idea is to try to avoid bias, because the problem in research, it is that we have many information, we have to select good information, we have many theories. The question is to what do we contribute to? And the main question at the end is, how do we reflect the reality of the fact and not what we think that the fact is or are? Okay, so let's take just 1 minute to exchange with you what can be in your mind critical thinking. So if I try to ask you to all of you to answer what can be critical thinking for you, what could be your response? So for you, Juliana?
Well, maybe I can start. So, for me, I believe the critical thinking is thinking which is constructed on the arguments, on some theories, and how to say, like, with some evidence-based thinking, I think. And yeah, shortly, that's it.
Great answer. Nizar?
Professor, I'm second your picture, and it seemed like me just thinking, and then how I can find out exact problem, bottom line of which research I'm gonna do, and then how I can sort out with the different literature view theories and how they practically implication, then going try to solution. So I'm second one. It's very competent, that picture. It's okay. This one.
Okay, thank you. Igli, Meta?
I believe for me it is judging the problem by the facts and finding the logical and most proper solution.
We can't hear you, Professor.
Sorry, for you, Eva?
What do we say? Proactive thinking.
Okay. So in fact, critical thinking, I would say it's many think about that, but especially in research, and we will see more deeply what critical thinking is. Why is it important, critical thinking? It is important because at the end, we write all article, we try to find solution or to find theoretical or managerial proposition about some problems. We write it, and the question is, at the end, are we really aligned with the fact, with what happened? So in fact, it's, I would say, it's a big picture to understand why is it important. It is to claim, to argue, to provide some thinking, to provide some conclusion based on some evidence, and sometimes everything of that can be false. And here there is, at the end, a game between one position and the other, especially in, I would say, very difficult area, because what is very difficult in research is that we try to contribute to something based on one theory, but at the end, we can have several theories who can look at the same thing with another manner to think. So the big issue will be to try to understand what can be the evidence and how can your evidence need to be, I would say, supported, and how you can diminish the counter arguments to the evidence you try to expose in your research paper. So let's go for all of you, and let's do a first little test. Go to ChatGPT, insert your thesis topic or your keyword in ChatGPT, and let's look about what you obtain, in fact, with ChatGPT, and we will discuss about it. Okay? So is it clear for everybody? So connect yourself to ChatGPT, put in your keywords or ask ChatGPT about your topic of your thesis, and let's look at the answer and try to understand, in fact, what are the main conclusions and what do you think about the conclusions that ChatGPT provides to you. You have 3 minutes. Okay. So what are your conclusions? Who want to begin? Eva?
Just give me 1 second more.
Yes, ma'am. Professor Me. Yeah, Professor, I just, my research topic is health information system, and just I checked through ChatGPT, and they just conclude in some kind of what type of health information system is can help out in different kinds of different departments of health. So just it can be help out in decision support system, clinical decision support system, in that patient care coordinations. It can be sought out how can be patient will be effectively health information system, and then public health surveillance is also part of health information concluded, and then how their evaluation of that patients and their treatments, and how come and how go out. It's all about the part of that health information system. So it's a very essential tool for health for modern era, and for it is very important to digitalization in the health system. So these all sect is the very important of health information system. Yes.
Okay. Great. And does it say to you what health information system is?
Yeah, health information system is to main. I am going to do that research topic in the under theory of Dillon-McLean information system model. So these are my how healthcare professional will be satisfied and they adopt this system in the health information system. My research topic is that. So my independent variables is that information system, information quality, system quality, and service quality, and how they will influence healthcare professionals. If they have proper information quality, service quality, and their system quality, they will be more satisfied and they are intent to use that system, health information system.
Thank you for your answer, but my question was,
yeah,
does ChatGPT provide to you definition based on theory about what health information system is?
Yeah, ma'am, about ChatGPT health information is a comprehensive and integrated system. They just give me definition, basic health information. What is this? It's a management health related data and information within a healthcare organization or a broader health system. It involves the collection, storage, processing, and determination the health data to support decision making, improve healthcare and delivery of that population of health outcomes. So this is they given me just conclude what is health information system regarding literature review.
Okay. For them, does it provide some references about this definition or not?
Not.
Okay, so if there is no references,
yes,
you have to look at the literature to understand what is health information system, because the definition can be very broad and you can have very generalistic answer in ChatGPT, okay?
Yeah, because it's ma'am not, it's unpaid and here it's not working because I'm in China. So I need VPN, yeah. So it's also not working properly, yeah. Not up to date, yeah.
No, but if you are not in China, in Europe, you can have exactly the same answer, you know. So there is here a question about what it is. And the question of the definition can be very different based on the literature. So you need to be very clear about what kind of definition in your thesis you will take. Okay,
yeah.
If you base on ChatGPT, do not provide good answer on that point.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Professor.
For you, Julia?
Yeah, my name is Julia, but you can call me Julia. Julia, heard a lot of versions of my name.
I got it.
So actually, I was smiling when I was reading and thinking, because for the last week I was working on the literature review, like systematic literature review, and I was thinking how to connect it. And when I read it, I actually, noted from which author, like I could literally say. For me, actually, the ChatGPT got quite well distinguished answer. So I will remind that my topic is about ideals, idiosyncratic ideals, and how they relate to occupational stress. And it's very funny because you can literally, and duality of the of this relationship. So basically, the answer that ChatGPT provided me was for the definition of ideals, which is actually correct. They didn't give me the references, but the definition was correct, and also some positive sides related to occupational stress and some negative sides related to occupational stress, and the summary of what he generated. And this, as I mentioned, it was quite funny because I have this in my literature review with a little bit different words, but it's true information. So in this case, I feel that the information that was provided to me was the right one. And so the conclusion would be that I guess it depends on the topic, and sometimes the information provided by ChatGPT is correct one. I don't know if that's something you were looking for.
Okay, I think that ChatGPT can provide some information, interesting information, obviously. The question about sources are very important because we observe that we have in France a colleague who wrote a newspaper about ChatGPT, who was an academic, and he asked to ChatGPT some, I would say, very accurate question, and he provided an answer with reference. And when he went to the reference, he discovers that the reference were false. So what is important, in fact, is to cross all the information and to check all the information provided by ChatGPT to be sure that what they provide in terms of information are at the end published. Because we know in research, we have different types of support of publication. You will understand that depending on the tool you use in your research, we can see based on the same data, different things, okay? But the question of the truth of the publication is a very important question. So ChatGPT can be, I would say, an interesting approach about what can be some key answer or some key point to study, but only focus on ChatGPT and take it for granted, to my point of view and to other research point of view, can be a little bit, I would say, critique, because we have observed that they provide information which can be based on article. We think they are true, but at the end, they are not published in article or files. So it's a very, very, I would say, you have to take it with very attention, this type of tool. Igli, for you, what was your feedback about ChatGPT?
So I received the definition of the global value chains. My question was how global value chains could become resilient to global disruptions. So not only it provided the definition, which is broad, but it's correct. It also provided seven different ways how global value chains could become resilient. And from the literature that I've been reading for the past half a year, I can agree that these are the ones that the literature has been speaking about.
Okay. In what area? Because the question about area is important too. In what area do you want to contribute?
In what area? In global value chains?
Yes, obviously, but global value chains, you can look at it in health, based on health journals, based on management journals, based on law journals, based on economic journals, etc.
So far, It is based on management journals, operational studies journals, strategic management journals, and regional management journals.
Okay, thank you. And for you, Yeva?
Yes, so for me, ChatGPT gave a very basic information. My topic is the impact of digital implications in human resources management upon different stakeholders. So it outlined main stakeholders, main impacts and enhancements focused on more positive outcomes rather than the negative ones. And I was given no clear definitions, just the stakeholders and how digital implications can help them to improve their, for example, for employees to the improved communication, enhance self-service, skill development opportunities, and so on and so on. So kind of basic knowledge, I would say.
So basic knowledge, and we know that when we go into thesis and go to research, we cannot base on only basic knowledge, we have to go deeper. Okay, so let's first look at critical thinking and logical thinking in management, I would say in practice-based area. We'll speak about some theory in judgments, managerial decision with some bias, and then we will go through research. Why I had, in fact, insert this part in this lecture, it is because we observe that in managerial decisions, sometimes there is really a lack of critical skills, and to understand, I would say more in daily practice, what can be the key issue for critical thinking can help to extrapolate it in research area. So if we look at critical thinking in management, and if we try to base it in decision theory, so it's a very, very short approach, we observe that there are really different manners to think. The first manner to think based on the theory was the model of absolute rationality. So absolute rationality means that when you have to take a decision, and take a decision make you will behave in certain manner, you can identify all the consequences of your decision in the future. And it means that you have kept all the information which exists in the world to find the good decision, okay? In a way, when we do research, it is exactly the same. We try to catch all the information to try to decide what will be the research question. And then the research question will orient us to some behaviors, which is what kind of methodology I will use and what kind of contribution I want to do. So the model of absolute rationality, I would say it's a very optimistic one, because at the end, is it really possible to catch all the information, to treat all the information, to have the right belief? In the reality, it is not possible. So it's, I would say, the first good thing to think about that. But let's go a little bit deeper to look what can be, a second manner to think. A second manner to think, and when we do research, and I would say daily decision, it's the same. Limited rationality means that individuals have to face with choice constructs in simplified model of reality. So put it differently, the individual has the knowledge that it cannot catch all the information of the reality. It just catch certain information of the reality, And because there is a lack of time, there is a lack of information, there is a lack of capacity, at the end, he will orient himself to optimal solution. And the question here and the limit here is, how do you represent and how do you understand the world in which you evaluate, and what kind of information based on your representation of the world do you catch to take the decision? Is it clear? Do you have questions about that? If you do not say anything, I mean, for me, it's clear. The third manner to think is what we call procedural limited rationality. So here is not the question of what kind of data are collected to take decision or collected to think, but what is your brain process, what is the decision maker process, what is the decision learning process, and when the individual understands how does it process to learn or to take decision, then it can affect, I would say, the decision. And the last manner to think is system 1 and system 2. System 1 means the individual will think very fast, and he will try to replicate decision, solution, manner to think about what he has done previously. This is the system 1. So this is a simplification of the reality. There is the same a repetition, a replication of the interpretation of the world, the impression of being. So it's a very, I would say, it's fast thinking, but it's a limited thinking because we do not open the box to collect other type of data in this type of system 1. System 2, which is a little bit complex, take more time. It's slower. I would say when you are in a PhD, you are fully involved in system 2. It's more thoughtful, more rational. Is based on structural thinking, reasoning, and I would say the negative side of system 2 is that, in fact, it consumes a lot of energy because you cannot replicate what you have seen previously. In the system 1, you only have to replicate, okay? So if I try to replicate something, you can say, okay, I have looked at in ChatGPT, they say that in my thesis, in the ChatGPT, based on what I have observed in my thesis process and my literature review, it fits well. So the next, I would say, research area I will try to explore, I can go directly to ChatGPT because I'm interested in ChatGPT. Because based on the previous experience, it fit well. But it does not mean that in the second experience, it will fit so well. And because we are in knowledge creation, the system 2 is, I would say, the most relevant manner to think about the problem. And again, what is difficult is to accept, to lose time, to go slower, and to be more rational in a structural thinking reasoning. And we observe that whatever the type of thinking you try to catch, system 1, system 2, procedural, etc., absolute rationality, the individual and all the individual, and we all have that, there are some heuristic. This heuristic creates some bias. This bias orients the individual to do some mistake. So this is a type. This is a case in managerial area but this is the case in research area. So heuristic sometimes is the use of routine or simplification. This routine and simplification creates a bias in decision making that will create an error. And in fact, reasoning based or reasoning without identified what could be your bias, what could be your simplification, what can be your routine, in manner to think, means that you cannot go through traditional representation. So put it differently, if you do not try to identify your own bias or the own heuristic your brain do, you will make some mistake in logical thinking, and you will make some mistake in, I would say, knowledge creation. Okay, is it clear? Do you have questions? So if I try to give some example about error in judgments, some heuristic or some bias, I will provide some example, but it's not, I would say, the big list of the mistake you can do or the heuristic or the bias you can have. Is just some of heuristic of bias. Example. The first one can be the heuristic of representation. Heuristic of representation is very I would say, it's simple to understand. Identified, if we try to imagine people who work in accounting or in finance, how do we imagine people who are working in the finance area or in accounting area? How does it look for you?
Yeah, Professor, it looks accountings or finance, we can maybe think about that they are dealing with some transactions and about money demand and supply and how they manage their staff salaries and how they fall to buy some purchasing, like this kind of things we can maybe interact with the accounts and financing. And finance, if we are starting any project like this, how we can finance, how we can target our finance, and account just like transactions to withdraw and maybe pay their money transactions.
Okay, it's nice for the task, but I don't speak about task. Just imagine for you an accountant or an individual who working in finance, what is the dress code? How does he look like? Generally, he have some gray or some black suits. You agree with me? Sometimes he have a white pullover or white, something white, okay? Very, I would say it's smart. And sometimes you have other characteristics, short hair, it's very nice on him. Okay, you have here an heuristic of representation. What does it mean? It means that your brain associates this picture to a profession, and it means that when you will look at someone who have this appearance, you will say he is an accountant. Perhaps not. We don't know. Okay, but here you have an heuristic of representation. So the heuristic of representation is in fact that you will analyze, and you will analyze the situation, and you will take the decision based on the apparent similarity of a situation you have already met. Okay. Second heuristic, the heuristic of adjustment of fixing. What is important here is to understand that your brain will take or will select some information to provide an answer or to provide a behavior based on a certain information he have registered just before. For instance, if I give you a number, I don't know, 12, and if I ask you how many people are in European Union, your brain can provide the following solution, a solution close to 12, if you do not have the right answer. Because I have fixed in your brain a number, and your brain is fixed based on this number, and it will try to go to an answer, but is fixed with this number. So this is a heuristic of adjustment of fixing. Okay. That's why it's important to try to avoid some starting point reference, often historically, to try to create new innovation or to try to create new knowledge, okay? Because it fixes your brain and you can have some mistakes after. The availability heuristic or cognitive accessibility is in fact when the brain look at the probability of an event, and based on the probability of this event appear, he tried to generalize the situation. For instance, we know that in France, there are some strikes. People say there are always strike in France. No, trust me, it's not always the case. Loss of aversion. What is it? In fact, the brain here will be fixed more in the risk of loss rather in the opportunity to gain. For instance, if I propose you to play in a game in which you have the risk to fail 100 euro, but you can have the opportunity to gain 200 euro, people can often say, no, I don't want to play this game because I risk to lose a lot of money, without taking in consideration the opportunity to gain the double. So here some people have this loss aversion. Framing bias is you have a situation in which you will present exactly the same situation, but with two types of information. Look at this example. You have two choices between two planes. The first plane will have 97 chance to arrive safely. The second plane will have 3% of chance to crash. The answer that the individual provides is, I prefer the plane one. Yes, but at the end, this is exactly the same. Plane 1 and 2 have the 3% chance to crash. Okay? Another important bias, and I think in research we can, I would say, face many times to this bias, is the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias means that your brain will select information which only go to the demonstration you want to have. Put it differently, if you said, I'm fully trustful in astrology, and we don't know really if astrology is logical or not, if we're in critical thinking, we can observe without normally difficult, I would say, thing, but perhaps it's a bias, that some astrologue said that in the 11th September 2001, we will have a big crash in the world, and it happened because we had the 11th September. Okay, we have a big historical point here. So the bias, the bias about confirmatory is the fact that only data which go through what you want to demonstrate are selected by your brain to demonstrate what you want to demonstrate. But the question is, are these data true, and what is the background of this data? Another bias is the authority bias. It can be linked to what happened in research because it's what we call the white coat effect. Put differently, if a very famous or popular researcher told me as a PhD student that this is exactly what we will have, your brain will say, okay, I think he's agree because he's very famous and very popular. But it does not mean that at the end it's the truth, in fact. And we observe there are some books that it can affect in a significant way the manner to think of people when someone who have an authority or someone who is well recognized in area of research, of area of knowledge, they can affect in a significant way the behaviors of individuals. And another error in judgment can be the halo effect. The halo effect is very interesting, is when you look at an individual, your brain will create a representation of this individual, and the brain can sometimes attribute more quality of this individual that he or she have in the reality. Okay, just because this is, again, not the white coat effect, but it's a type of white coat effect, but not based on, I would say, academic or expertise knowledge, but just because this person looks smart, and because this person looks smart, she can have different type of, I would say, the positive attribute or positive characteristic. Okay, so here, in fact, it's what we can expose in managerial process, in daily decision, but in research area too, in a way. But let's go a little, I would say, more deeper about critical thinking now in the research area. So at this stage, do you have questions?
Yes, actually, I wanted to ask you about the bias. It was very interesting for me to hear. It's very related to psychology and in general. And for me, while you were describing them, I was thinking, okay, I'm doing that. For example, when I'm reviewing the literature, I always looking for the stress effect and ideals. It doesn't matter if the article doesn't talk directly. I'm thinking, might the factor that they describe have a link to occupational stress? And just in general, do you have any like advices? How can we proceed? Because from what I hear, it seems that you have to be like very conscious all the time to make any decisions. Not only talking about the PhD, but in general in life, to not make those bias come to your mind all the time. So, do you have any, like, I don't know, advices for us? How can we control these things? And for example, even if this literature review and articles, right? For example, what could I do to make my notes about this specific article not so subjective and I don't know.
Okay. Yes. An advice, but we will do a process which can help you, okay? But a big advice is try to look at the topic, I would say it with new eyes, and look at it with distance, and try to look at it saying yourself that if I would not be involved in this area, what would be my understanding of the reality it's presented to me? So that's why I would say it's the time distance can help. So you write something, you put it, I would say, on your computer, you take 1 week, 2 weeks, and after you go back, it can be away. But when you identified the type of bias, really the question is, imagine I'm a new baby, I just arrived in this area. If I don't know anything about that, what would be my impression about this article? What is for me, I would say, again, important to control is the confirmation bias. And generally, what is important is to observe what can surprise you. So not, okay, it's logical for me, so that's like that. It's what can surprise me. We observe in a research area we have conducted with some colleagues that we go with a very clear idea about what we want to prove, and someone unexpected come from the people who were interviewed. So there were two options. The first one is to avoid, and the second one is to say, what do they want to say to me? Let's try to look at what do they want to say to me to try to understand, in fact, what happened here. And here you can have you can obtain some gold piece, because you have opened the box of something which was unexpected. And another advice I would give you is to be very close to the field you explore. Put it differently, you can collect some big data, you can have many questionnaire, you can make some, I would say, hypothetical deductive, very nice model. Okay, the question at the end is it, I would say, the most close as possible as what people live in their daily workplace? And do not hesitate to go with your result to the people you have interviewed to understand how do they respond, in fact, to your result. And sometimes you will have a very unexpected answer or unexpected behavior from these people, because they will be more sensitive to the manner you perceive themselves, the bias, rather than the reality you have observed in the fact. So I would say a continuous confrontation with people who are in the field, but in the daily workplace, in practice, is very important. Okay, let's go to critical thinking in research based on some example. Example 1. So I will let you read the example 1 and tell me what do you think about. Okay. If you have to qualify this example, what do you think about in terms of critical skills? Are there many, is the critical skills high or not, and why?
Okay, maybe I can answer. Well, from first point of view, for me, it seems that it maybe was not too critically analyzed, because I think that you can't make an argument that the impact was mainly possible if there was no if before there was no infrastructure. So we can't understand how big the impact and what kind of impact was by this specific technology, but not by the infrastructure itself. I would say that it's not very critical.
Low critical. Okay, we agree. Very good answer. About this example, we have low critical skills. Let's look at the example 2 and try to be creative about how you can explain some key points in this example 2, and how you can be more critical, on what kind of base you can be more critical. Yes, Juan?
Maybe we are trying to compare different line of treatments. Maybe we are comparing allopathic drugs versus homeopathic drugs, could be. Or we are talking about drugs versus some change in the behaviors of patients that maybe are not comparables.
What can be other, very good answer, what can be other explanation?
I would maybe add to Huang that probably we don't know about the research groups, the subjects, the subjects and the groups that they were observing, and maybe the patients were in different stages of the diabetes, for example. And also it seems that if it's a very recent development, probably it wasn't certified and didn't have a lot of clinical studies. So probably the long-term perspective is also missing.
Other explanation? I would say a very evident explanation, or possibility to explain, opportunity to explain, based on what happened in day-to-day manner to look at research. Be creative. Don't feel afraid to give a bad answer. It's not a bad answer. It's just an answer.
I have one that the source of the article that claimed positive results is it's a public paper. It's not a scientific publication, or it's a fake nuke in internet or something like this.
Or
yeah, I wanted to say about the funding actually. That's a good one.
The funding, yes.
Exactly. So you can look at the sources, you can look at who gives the money, and who gives the money can affect in a significant way the independence of the research. So then critical thinking, and it's a good critical thinking in an academic context, is to look at the sources and to look at who gives the money. Yes, Juan?
Okay, thank you. But here I have a great bias. As you know, I came from this industry, and there are really strong rules for the source. Yes, I have lived that. So I understand, and that is the challenge that every day I must face, that the paper that you're presenting has been found by this enterprise. So I don't believe it. But really, there are no reason for doesn't believe. They are a source of money, yes, for the research, yes. We explained that in the first part of the paper, but how to drive this situation? Because I feel that there are no change in the data. There are a source of financial, but the data and the information is real.
Yes, so the data are the same. I agree with you, and I have faced it during my PhD studies, that you can use exactly the same data, but if you do not use the same software, even if you try to obtain, to use the same methodology, or the software want to test a multiple correlation, okay, depending on the software, based on the same data, you will have different results. And I need to be honest with you. It's not my experience, but the representation in research, people around me said, but you know, to be published, you need to have some significant results, significant correlation between A and B. No significant correlation cannot be published. I'm not agree with that. Non-significant correlation is a result. But because of the game of the publication, then you can take the same data in and test it with two software, and I obtain two types of results. One are significant, the other one are not significant.
Yeah, I'm agree. Just
it's not a question, I would say, it's about the data, but we cannot exclude, I don't say we confirm, okay? We cannot exclude that if the paper is published and founded by some pharmaceutical company, the pharmaceutical company would like to test and to say to the world that you can have some positive effects, this can create a bias of confirmation.
Okay, here I'm not good for the pharmaceutical industry. I have a doubt. Yes, at this moment I understand that if we have a results, we must confirm the source of the money for the funding. But that means that apply for all the research. For example, there has been a publication about the vaccination in UK. After a great research, we found that the physician that make the research has their own stocks in one company. There is no source of money. This is another bias. So there we must doubt about the results. And as the same thing, we could have some agenda from any research that must create a bias. Everyone have a filters of life. So at the end, the question is how to manage this uncertainty about the validity of the information, not the data, the information.
I would say it's not the purpose of this teaching today, manage that. The purpose of this teaching today is to say, okay, what can be the element which can stress the result? This is the only purpose of that. I would say at the end, you have when you submit a paper, you have the editor who asks you what was the funds, where the money come from, and you have to put it on the paper. And that's all, you know. And after, I would say the academic, the scientific area do the job to test and retest and re-retest, okay, to find if we aggregate too many results in the same sense. But the idea here is to point that importance of the sources, importance of the founding, importance of the context, importance of the software, and this can explain, in fact, what kind of results you obtained. Okay, and we observe in some paper that there are sometimes so ideal data management and data treatment. Put it differently, the treatment are done in a very, very golden standards, but we know in practice it's sometimes a little bit difficult. So you have an interesting paper about the question about smoothing the data and give false data. The border between smoothing and creating false data, it's an object in research, okay? It's a question of ethics. But if we try to use this example in our lecture today, critical skills, the idea is to be very realistic about how the result can be obtained.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Very clear. Thank you.
Okay. So if we look at research and education and critical skills, critical thinking, we observe that critical thinking is, I would say, it's very broad. We have many definitions, and the conception can be very different with respect to the scope of the thinking, the type of goal, the criteria and the norm of thinking carefully, and the thinking components on which they focus. So whatever the definition, there is some basic concepts. It's to take with attention a manner to think, focus it to a goal. This is important. And there are at least 3 pictures about critical thinking. It is done for the purpose of making up one's mind about what to believe or to do. A second one is the person engaging in the thinking is trying to fulfill standards or adequacy and accuracy appropriate to the thinking, and the thinking fulfills the relevant standards to some threshold levels. So there is no only one definition, there are always many definitions, but it's very goal directed. And what can be the process of critical thinking? But before going of the process, let's look about why is it important, actually, critical thinking. It is important because our world is more uncertain, more complex, digitalization, intelligence artificial, ChatGPT creating some representation of the reality. We have interdependency between task and people. We have computing power, we have communication, we have people who go, I would say, more and more involved in their health, for instance. And we have an environment which become more and more complex, and in which we will have different paradoxical and contradictory injunctions to manage and to catch in terms of research. So now this is your turn. How we will proceed? We will proceed to 12 steps. In each step, you will take 2 minutes to answer to each question. And for 2 steps, I will put you in group to discuss about the answer you have provided to the previous steps, okay? So the first step is noticing a difficulty. So what is one problem, or what is an actual problem for you? So think about your thesis topic and try to formulate a difficulty in a very clear, I would say, mode of expression. Is it clear for everybody? Yes? Okay, so you put it in a piece of paper, and you have 2 minutes. Let's go. Okay, let's go to the step 2. Step 2, you will define the problem clearly as possible, and imagine you have to explain it to a 5-year child, very young child. Okay, 2 minutes. Okay, step 3. You will try to divide the problem into manageable sub-problem and try to classify this problem by category. Category, not category. Two minutes more. Step 4, formulating a variety of possible solutions to the problem or sub-problem. So here, you can have one problem and multiple solutions. 2 minutes. Step 5, you will determine what evidence is relevant to decide among possible solutions to the problem or to the sub-problem. I will add something here. You will identify what evidence are not relevant to decide among possible solutions and why. 2 minutes.
I could ask you to give an example, just sort of complicated for me to understand the question.
In fact, here you try to identify what kind of proof is important, okay, to choose some solution. The question can be what kind of proof are not important or can go against the solution and why. So not in a positive way, do it now in a negative way. Okay, next step. Devising a plan of systematic observation of experiments that will uncover relevant evidence. 2 minutes. Okay, 7th step. Carry out the plan of systematic observation and experimentation. So try to go more in concrete action or concrete plan. So put it differently, here we are in the methodology approach. Okay, so now you have 2 minutes left to complete the step from 1 to 7 if you did not have time to complete it. Okay, so if you have a lack of time, for instance, in the step 2 or in the step 4 or in the step 3, you have 2 more minutes to complete the step in which you did not have enough time. Okay, so now you will take, and we will take 10 minutes of break. Then we will go back and we will exchange about what you have provide in terms of question solution from the step 1 to 7. Okay? Do not use the 10 minutes to complete. Okay? Go to take a coffee or a tea, take 10 minutes, and at the beginning, I will give you 1 minute to just, I would say, write again or look again about what you have proposed, to look and to try to control by yourself is everything is fitting well or not. Okay, but don't do it during this 10 minutes break. Your brain needs 10 minutes. Okay, see you in 10 minutes.
Asta, Professor Asta, can I ask you to stay? I have a few questions. Okay, I will switch to Lithuanian. Don't mind. Aš išsiunčiau laišką ir tiesiog čia dabar perklausiu gal tą patį. Aš dėl tų keistadžių norėjau, ir dėl keistadžių vieną klausimą norėjau, o kitą dėl to literature review. Tai aš, čia paliko tą, nepaliko ekraną pašėrinti, aš gal pašėrinsiu, bet gali parodyti noriu. Galiu? Ar?
Nors tau matai pertrauką reikalinga, tai gal tu nori po paskaitos pasilikti 10 minučių.
Gerai, kaip jums patogiau.
Nes vis tiek dabar truputį prasimankštink ir paskui mes pasiliksim ir pasižiūrėsim.
Gerai, ačiū labai. Ačiū.
Can we go back? Eva, Egle, and Nisa, you are with us? Great. So now you take 2 minutes to look at all your proposal from the step 1 to the step 7 in overall. Look if it fits or not. Okay. Now, each of you will explain what was the problem, what could be solution, what is your plan, and why this plan and why not other plans. Egle, you want to begin?
Yes, I can begin.
Great. So the target for the other members of the group will be to identify why and what can be questionable in this proposal, okay? And not judgment not in an interpretation way, but very in a factual way.
So I will go step by step from 1 to 7. So first of all, the problem was in a question form. How can global value chains become resilient to disruptions and or lack of resilience to global disruptions by global value chains?
Sorry, can you do it again? I write it. How go global value chain, go resilience?
Become resilient to global disruptions.
Global disruptions. Okay. Okay.
Now that explanation to the child, well, I was thinking how to put it in a manner. We cannot go to the store and buy that race car that you wanted because the shop does not have it now. It is out of stock, but it will be back in the store sometime in autumn and we will be able to buy it only then. Well, that would be something related.
Okay.
Now the sub-problems, so that would be lack of resilience of the supply side, too long supply chain, too little safety stock, too little flexibility in the supply chain, managerial decisions are not relevant to disruptive events, and no or too little government support. Now, the solutions for this would be in the same order: diversification of suppliers, regionalization and localization, redundancy and stock billing, flexibility and agility, risk assessment and scenario planning, and government support and international cooperation. Now the fifth was evidence, so actual cases of the firms in the global value chains, because they are directly involved in the situation and they are direct receivers of the consequences by these disruptions.
Can you do it again? Sorry. About evidence?
Actual cases of the firms in the global value chains, basically.
Okay.
Well, the sixth was cases of firms that are not involved in global value chains, something that would be unrelevant for this. And the seventh, it would be multiple case study of firms in global value chains, maybe in a specific sector, let's say manufacturing, and semi-structured interviews, if I understood the seventh point correctly.
How many interviews and how many case studies?
7 to 10 could be.
Okay. And if we go a little bit further, what could be the main idea to explore? 3 or 4 topics.
How these firms responded to these global disruptions. What were the actions that they implemented in order to become resilient, let's say?
Okay. Okay, other member of the group, can you provide a feedback on that in a way to develop your critical skills? Yes, Juan.
Egil, it's in order to develop over your presentation. I have one doubt. The first one is you're talking about resilience, but your driver is how to manage the situation. And for me, there are in the 2 opposite sides, because resilience is how to adapt to anything that is disruptive, yes? But you propose all the solutions. all the solutions, all the providers, search another source, anything like this. And for me, maybe it's for me, they are a definition to clarify what do you want to do in resilience first. And the second one is that when you present your solutions, in my mind, all is about money, because every solution demands more money. So I'm not sure if this side of economic impact of to be prepared is a subject that we must understand, because it's great to have another provider, but if you have another provider, that means that you must have higher cost. That's clear?
Yes, should I comment on it?
If you want.
I don't have to, but about the suppliers, it doesn't have to be more expensive. It can be just a shorter supply chain in order to become more resilient.
Okay. Julia?
Okay, I can try. I had some difficulties with 5th and 6th, but we will see. So the problem, I wrote that there's a limited research or information on potential benefits and drawbacks of the idiosyncratic deals, including how different contextual factors influence them. The problem for 5 years old, I wrote that how to make fair and equal work conditions for everyone, considering the fact that some people have special arrangements. So nobody will, well, not nobody, but just there would be less stress. I don't know how to formulate it, but it's just concerning the stress level of other people. And with the sub-problems, I wrote that what is the impact of the ideals on occupational stress, considering both positive and negative aspects. And another sub-problem is how can organizations effectively manage and integrate duality of the ideals to promote employees' well-being and fair treatment. And for the solutions, I wrote that it could be an empirical studies where I would collect employees' experience about their experience with ideals and distress. Also, well, there could be a research about existing practices in the companies, maybe like a case studies and comparative studies to see how different kind of companies well approach to ideals and what works. Also, the study, probably empirical study about the effectiveness of the support mechanisms. Well, it could integrate the empirical study and the comparative study of the practices, you know, to see what works from the company's perspective and what works from the employee's perspective. Also, I wrote the studies of the perception and of the ideals and stress, because there's a objective and subjective way to perceive both parameters. And I also noted, but it's like just a remark, that the studies should be longitudinal. I mean, in several points. Yes, yeah, in several points of times. And well, with the 5th of the evidence for the solutions, I don't know if I did this correctly, but I wrote that I need to define like a time scope. That was for the longitudinal approach of the studies, the size of the participant sample and the scope of them, because the different occupations have different results, how many companies would participate, what kind of qualitative and quantitative data I would collect. And yeah, that's it for the factors which are well, bad for the solutions. I didn't identify them because basically the things that help to make the solution, find the solution, they also can be an obstacle, because wrong definition of the, for example, the sample group or the industry or whatever, it can make a bad things. And for the plan of the experiment, I wrote that there should be 3 to 4 studies, like a research because I'm writing a paper-based PhD. So one would be just a general overview and the of the literature. The second, the impact of the ideals on the stress, where I would I should probably compare the control group in the company, which works without an ideal, an experimental group with the ideals, and measure pre and post ideal stress level, performance, and other indicators. Second study would be a comparative study to measure the effect of the ideals in different companies in the different industries, and one more study to approach the longitudinal perspective of the study, so the long-term effect, to evaluate the long-term effect of the ideals. Yeah, so I could go into more details, but I guess it's not.
Thank you. Okay, comments?
Nobody understood nothing. Great.
No, in fact, it's not that. What is very interesting is one topic, one researcher, one minor to see. It's really that. Egle, what is interesting, and perhaps you need to go a little bit through in the proposal, is the question of resilience, because resilience is when is a big crisis. So the question of when can we speak about resilience is important. So here, what can be interesting is to explore a type of nature of crisis. For instance, if we look at the pandemic, it was the mask crisis. If I look at healthcare organization, I don't know, oxygen crisis, bed crisis, vaccine crisis, something around that. But what is very important is to not, if I understand well, the literature about resilience, we speak about resilience when there is an extreme event or a critical event. So the question of global disruption need to be more precise in terms of nature of this global disruption. Okay, for instance, is it innovative or a new idea in the market, global disruption? I don't know. Do we have to use a resilience term? So the question of the resilience, the nature of crisis, and perhaps the type of industry can be some key issue to look about your topic.
This will definitely be involved in my thesis, the definition of the disruptions, what exactly is what we are talking about, and the exact definition is going to be provided.
Exactly. The question of disruption, and can we use the term resilience to disruption?
Well,
it's a question. It's a question. You do not have to provide answer.
Okay.
It's just to have it in mind, and if you use it, no problem, but justify it. And identify why I can and when I cannot. Okay?
Okay,
Here,
thank you.
Develop your critical thinking and skills. Thank you for this great presentation. Yeva, your turn.
Okay, so my problem is, what is more important, the advantages of digital implications in human resources management for various stakeholders, or potential challenges associated like data security, privacy, etc. To make it more simple, is it worth to implement digital technologies in human resources management? And first to consider the weight of advantages, then the weight of disadvantages, and the level of danger or possible dangers. And possible solutions could be to, first of all, find out theory and perspectives from practical use standpoint for the advantages, then the same for the disadvantages, and to rely on recent search and draw possible conclusions. Evidence needed would be literature review, evidences from practical implications of digital technologies in human resources management, and future forecasts. A possible way to find the answers would be to, from practical standpoint, would be to choose various and diverse enterprises that employ digital technologies in human resources management and observe, research various stages of implementation. And the plan to do this could be, first of all, to find out possible enterprises in Lithuania, for example, Baltic countries, to define their profiles and categorize them, to decide on observation type, would it be interviews, diary entries, etc., get the consents, start observation, analyze data, and draw conclusions.
Okay, thank you. The other member of the group of feedback?
Eva,
Yeah.
question about ethics. Maybe do you have any approach about the ethics of human beings, sociology point of view of this kind of manage of data?
No, not yet.
Niftar, some comments? You are mute.
No, Professor, I'm just focusing on my 7 points. Yes.
Okay.
It looks interesting study, and it's a human resource perspective. So I think it will be maybe more clear about that, how it can be gonna and which approach will be gonna. That will be more clear.
Egleo, comment?
I would actually like to hear a little bit more about this this research. Of course, not now, but it seems like a relevant topic.
Okay. And for you, yes, Juan.
I have one more comment, Eva. This is the topic that I have read in the papers, in the public papers, but maybe like how do you say that in the journals or internet. So how to manage this kind of information to the general public? Maybe could be another one, because when I read the first time, for me has been a little bit shocked that there are this kind of new options. So how the question is how to manage the public information for this subject.
Maybe I can't answer that because the main focus would be on the academia world, on big researches that are based on some kind of results, theories, and that are not just some kind of manipulations. So, but of course, the public knowledge, journal articles, are also kind of information source, and this is one of the difficulties to face while sourcing the information. I have to agree, yes.
Okay, just perhaps something, Eva, if I have understood well, it's a very broad question. So perhaps, but I don't know, an angle of approach of this question can be interesting. because if we look at it, it can create a representation of you will evaluate something, which means that at the end you will provide some normative answer about it is positive more or less, or it is negative more or less in this way. But because managing human resources is very complex, perhaps to look at one specific angle, I don't know which one, can be interesting to look at. Okay. Julia, your turn. Present your topic and all your steps.
Well, should I? I mean, I'm sorry, I previously understood that I had to present an agreement. You asked for the comments.
No comments. Now it's your your turn to present.
I don't know if I need to repeat, but I just wanted to say sorry that before I was telling about my topic. So, okay, so the problem that I'm looking for is that there's limited information on how what are potential benefits and drawbacks of idiosyncratic deals, including how different contextual factors influence this, their drawbacks or benefits. And when we talk about the problem explanation for 5 years old, I wrote that I would explain the question as how to make fair and equal work conditions for everyone, considering the fact that some of the people have special arrangements. And the sub-problems of the research problem would be what are the impact of the ideals on occupational stress, considering both positive and negative effects, and how can organizations effectively manage this duality of ideals to promote employees' fair treatment, well-being, and stress-free environment. As a solutions for this problem would be studies, research, and empirical studies to collect employees' experience of ideals and their impact on the stress, examination of existing practices regarding ideals and stress in the companies, and measurement of their effectiveness. Also studies of the perception of objective and subjective perception of the ideals and stress they're causing or influencing, and to make a longitudinal studies again for the measure the long-term effect of ideals on occupational stress. And to collect the evidence collected would be interviews, responses, questionnaires, and all this kind of type of data, both qualitative and quantitative. For the plan of the experiment, there would be 4 studies. First one would be a literature review. Second one would be the empirical study on impact of the ideals on the stress. So there will be 2 groups, control group without the ideals and the experimental group with the ideals. And I would measure the pre and post ideals stress level, satisfactory, fairness, and performance rates. The second study would measure the long-term effects of the ideals. So the difference would be that the same group from the first group, from the second study would participate in 3 months to 2 years time measurements. And one more would be analysis of organizationals and how they're making different approaches and use different practices of the ideals, the gradient, and how employees and employers, the managers, what is the effect of the ideals, and what are the most beneficiary ways to manage them.
Okay, thank you. Some feedback from colleague? Yes, Juan.
Time we have talking about Julia about one thing, and maybe I go again for the same point, that is Julia talk about equality, and maybe we must talk about equity. So there has been a difference in the concept that could change everything. But I said to Julia that it's an amazing research. It's amazing. It's incredible what will be the outcome of the research.
Thank you, Han, for your comment. I remember your comments from the last time as well, and I was, as I said, maybe if we will have an opportunity to discuss them, so in non-lecture environment, it would be more easier. And when I will have some results, it would be also interesting to share them with you, just for you to review and see what do you think about it.
Thank you. Just perhaps a little advice for those who did not have listened to your big outcome and big study. Provide perhaps 3 or 5 keywords in which you focus, because there are many concepts. You want to do so many things that I think it's a program of 20 years. Or at least 10 years. So it's very good because it's very ambitious. But after you will have some reality of, I would say, it's time constraints. So the question can be what kind of question to what kind of methodology do you want to link? One question, one methodology. Because you have too many things here. And don't forget, do it in a KISS method. Keep it simple and stupid. Okay.
Thank you for your feedback.
Juan, we listen to you. Can you please, you are mute.
Yeah, it's easy. Could you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. The problem is how to guarantee a high quality level of healthcare assistance when the patient online feedback changes the identity of physician, and by the way, the medical practice, because the physician must adapt himself as social being to the demands of their patients. How to explain a 5-year-old child? It's not easy, but the decision that a physician makes over your health must keep based on the best evidence available and not modified for the social or economic pressures. The problem could be analyzed in 2 branches, the social relations and the medical practice. By the side of the social relation, the sub-items could be a physician is a social being and must adapt himself in order to survive. The patient power increases as a social being every day. The patient influences her physician behaviors. The physician resists or reacts to the patient feedback, and that changes their identity. The identity of a physician affects their medical practice. And the second one is the medical practice and decision must be based on the best evidence applied to the individual. So there are differences. It's not the best evidence. We must adapt this information for each individual. Which are the problems, or the solutions? Achieve that the physicians are aware of the patient influence. Define techniques to manage the patient online feedbacks, and develop the skill of physician to read, interpret, and use in the best way the information. What is the evidence that we must have to this solution? What kind of information send the patient to their physician through the online feedbacks? Make an 5W, 1H, what, where, when, how, about the online physician feedback managed that the physician does today. Continue improvement based on the patient feedback. Validate with the best evidence available. So there are demands, but we must face it with the best evidence available. What kind of change introduce the physician in an aware or not aware form to their, and here I have a doubt, for personal and professional life, because maybe we can't make the difference. Motivation of patient to submit online feedback to their physician, characteristics of the patient, age, cultural relation, politics, scholarity, patient feedback in the last 2 years, that is the frame of time, and change on identity on physician without patient feedbacks. The more highly point here has been to find out which are the not relevant information. Maybe there I must work a lot, because I say that the platform used for the publish and online patient feedback doesn't matter, whatever it is one, and the year of publication, but maybe I must work there. How to devise this systematic observation? One, define through the systematic review of literature if there are enough information, define the tools to validate the hypothesis, define the source of information, define the bias control, roll out the interviews and tools application, validate the bias, and analyze the information. The plan carry out has 7 steps. Find the patients, find the physicians. The aim is to have 30 to 50 in one country. Analyze the information, similarities and difference, interview the physicians, apply tests of identity to determine if there are a real change on the identity of the physicians, establish the change of identity in a human being, and establish the ways to influence and change the identity of a human being.
Okay, thank Juan.
Thank you.
Feedback from colleagues?
Okay, I
Yes,
will give a video. It looks very interesting study and very explained very well. But in my point of view, according to academic perspective, it's too long materials about problems and their perspective, their solution. I think it can be maybe concrete and summarized according to the academic perspective. Just it's a suggestion. Yeah.
Thanks, Nisa. Also comments?
It's just a small, maybe even more question for Juan. I really like the topic as well, and I was just wondering about the bias, and you said that you will measure them, and I think you will evaluate them, and then you will somehow measure them, if I remember correctly. So do you have any methods already defined maybe, or in your mind, what would be used?
To control the bias? Not really now. Not really now, but I am aware that validate and control the bias must be very, very important now. And to find out the tools to have a measure.
Yeah, thank you. That would be also interesting if you would share it sometime, because it's, I think, relevant to everyone who's doing the research on a human work and resources.
Okay, and let's finish by Nisa.
Okay, Professor. So the first question was, is that my actual problem, the main actual problem is that transfer existing old system into new system, digitalization of the system. My main question is that what are the factors that influence the adoption of AI-based clinical decision support system in the healthcare sector? It is that is my main research problem. So the second question is that 5-year audits like paperless system and paper-based and computerized system. Paper-based and computerized, it's just simplicity. All existing system to into digitalization system. The third one, so my main study is there to adopt clinical decision support system. So what are the main factors are important for adoption, and what main influence and affected factors to adopt that system? So I found that it is main and most important point is that to healthcare professional satisfaction, it is very important to adopt and intend that system. The fourth one is problem is adoption, how to sort out and solve. So I want to use that advantages of that system, how it can be work, how it can be efficient if we will use that system. And we need to proper coaching of healthcare professional, proper leadership to train and coach them of that system. And fifth question is that about giving example, it can be comparable to developed country system and underdeveloped country system and existing system, or not, it will be adopt new system. It can be comparable and also can be from literature view and experiences of that person who already adopt that system. The why it will be important for this system, so how it can be happen if we didn't use this system. So what type of problem we can face? We can't meet standardization of that hospital system to those who already adopt this clinical research support system. How if we didn't adopt the system, so how it can be effect on decision making, and how it can be we can make result outcomes is very accurately. And the last one is that about methodologies. It can be a mixed approach, maybe some interviews who already adopt and use this system, and if they didn't, what type of problems and challenging face if they are using new technology. And also questionnaire based system, and the accept healthcare professionals who are use this system, and there we can be also collect data from them, what they have experiences, what their type of challenging they are facing of to use this system. It is a cross-sectional based study, and it will be gonna less than 500 and maybe 200 to 300, it depend on that environment of study and depend of that country, what it can be done. And it will be then after collection of that data, and it will be analyzed, depend on that data, which software will be we can use, and then also draw discussion and conclusion effective, also managerial implication of that system practically. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, colleague, for feedback to develop your critical skills. Yeah.
Nisar, you know that I love your research. I love a lot. I want to work with you. I trust you. I have two questions. The first is talking about, you talk about adoption.
Yeah.
The other side is the resistance. Yes.
Yeah.
If in your paper you take on account which are the reason of the resistance to adopt the systems.
Yeah.
And the second one is about the change between the countries. I don't know if you have see in your review that if these adoptions change between the environment of the countries, if there are anything that we could use to improve the adoption.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you for your question. The first question is that my main concern is that adoption of this system. So the problem is that why can't adopt this system? Because who use this system, like healthcare professionals and who are first user of this system, they are not satisfied from enough information quality or service quality and system quality. So they are not enough satisfied, so they didn't adopt this system. So my main concern is that healthcare professional, their satisfactions and how they operately in that system. If we give proper information, proper training as like leadership, or maybe training or coaching them, they may be more satisfied. They will be quite aware of this system knowledge and how they can be effective for them, then they will use to adopt the system. The first one. The second one is that it is depend on still. I didn't complete this research yet, because if I think about according to my country like Pakistan, so we didn't use the system still, and we are so far from developed country. So I think this research is also very beneficial for underdeveloped or maybe developing countries. And about those developed countries, even they are developed, but more some hospital information system, they still didn't use this clinical decision support system. Maybe it can work, maybe some hospitals or maybe large DHQ level hospitals, not everyone. So we can also use that system, or maybe we can compare those hospitals or maybe those countries who are near to close to each other, but one is using this system and the other one is not using. So maybe we can compare. So it will be maybe explored after discussion with my professor, depend on that environment, yeah, and circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, sir.
Thank you. Also comments? No, so perhaps I will do one as previously, because there are many things about adoption, non-adoption, nature of IT, context, etc. You speak about decision making, etc. So maybe again, try to simplify the topic, or at least to divide it into projects.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It can be perhaps a good option to try to identify one question, one solution, one question, one research, one solution, because it will be very complex. And the question of adoption can be linked to, I would say, the work can be linked to many things. It can be to the work, to decision of the head of the hospital, etc., the opportunity to use some IT or not. And it's perhaps not only sometimes a question of satisfaction or not, because sometimes you have, by normative pressure, to use this IT, even if at the end you do not use it, but you said that you are trained, and it's not because you are trained that you use it in daily work. You can train, you can say, I adopt, but in the current work, I do not adopt, I would say, in 100% of my work. So I think, because it's a very important topic, trying to simplify in a very simple question, like, you have a big ham and you try to cut, or you have a big fish and you take different part of the fish, can be a good option to clarify, in fact, one question, one research question, and one solution.
Yeah, okay. Got it, Professor. Thank you so much for your nice suggestion. Thank you. I will. Thank you.
It's a proposal, but again, it's always, based on what your PhD director said. So let's continue and finish this lecture. So we have done the step from 1 to 7, and I think at this stage we can only exchange on the step 1 to 7, but we observe that, as I told you previously, there are 12 steps. So the step 8 is when you will go to, I would say, the sample and catch the data. You will note the results of the observation and the experiments. And when you will obtain all these results, then you have to open the box of the challenge and you have to exchange with other people what are the results, because it's based on the information you have collected and based on the exchange you will have with the other, as I told you at the beginning of the lecture, especially those you had interviewed, that you will try to make your research as reliable and it will fit, in fact, correctly. And sometimes you can have some counter arguments, which can be a very helpful help to better understand what happened, because in a way you have to provide a simplification of the reality, but to, I would say, eliminate some data to explain the reality you have. The elimination of data cannot be systematic, and sometimes some data you have tried to put out the story need to be integrated within the story. And this is really because you exchange with people that you can see what are the important data to try to be the more consistent possible. So it will provide a credible story when you put and explain your story, your question, your solution, the data you have collected, when you try to open the box of the discussion. And after the 11th step, you will go back to individual thoughts, because based on this exchange, then you can go to conclusion from gathered evidence and accepted testimony, and you will finish by accepting a solution that the evidence, I would say, supports in a good way. So what can we observe? At the end, this is, I would say, a big process in which you have individual process, collective process, and you return to individual thought. But at the end, you will develop, I would say, some skill and some capacity, which can be linked to the fact that you have to observe what happened around you. You have to feel about what can be the part of the puzzle which is missing, what kind of perplexity I want to solve, what kind of question I want to answer. You have to look at the fact that the formulation of a question need to be very clear, because in a way, critical skills is the fact that you wonder and you ask yourself what can be an interesting question. It can develop your skills about imagination to provide different type of answer. The point of inferring is important too, because one works out what would be the case if a possible answer were assumed. So it's very important in this point. Another component of the process is the knowledge, because one uses stored knowledge of the subject matter to generate possible answers or to infer what would be expected on the assumption of a particular answer. What is important too in critical skills is the fact that you go to experimentation, and experimentation means that you are very close to the sample you will observe. Consulting is important too, because in fact, consulting means that one finds a source of information, you go from the different source of information and you look if this information is suitable or not, relevant or not. What is important too is to identifying, analyzing the arguments, and judging, obviously, because it's the fact to make a judgment on the base of accumulated evidence and reasoning. So it's a question too of decision, because at the end, it will be a decision about what kind of data I will select, what kind of accumulate evidence I will select. Other parts of the process is the disposition to develop in critical thinking. So in a way, when you enter in the research project as a PhD student, I would say you will have this disposition, this particular attitude, or this particular, I would say, characteristic, which is the attentiveness. So the attentiveness means that, okay, I have a question I have to solve, but perhaps around me, there are some sources of perplexity, some sources of elements which were under-examined. And with my curiosity, I want to explore this point. The habit of inquiry is important too, because thinking critical needs mental energy and needs initiative too. Going to critical thinking means courage, because critical and thinking critical required intellectual courage to go beyond, as I told you in the first diapo, I would say not representation which are accepted or acceptable for many people. And based on courage, the question of self-confidence is important too, because a lack of confidence, I would say, cannot support critical thinking. Courage and confidence can support critical thinking. Open-mindedness too, because we observe that to have a critical thinking means that we go out a dogmatic attitude, and it means that the curiosity is here and it opens the box of the creativity. So critical thinking means willingness to suspend a judgment and to explore different type of solution, to trust in reason. And Adu said what is very important in critical thinking, because it's a process which never ends at the end, is to try to seeking the truth. And seeking the truth is very important in critical thinking disposition, because it means that you will never be satisfied, but by the manner the reality was observed, the manner the solution was proposed, or the manner the solution was presented through the research area. So if we try to summarize about disposition to develop critical thinking, what we can observe is first reasoning and suspecting, not taking for granted, looking at situation from multiple perspective and dimension, be open to change and innovation, look at different situation, look at thought without prejudice, without any judgment, being open-minded, thinking analytically, and paying attention to details. I would say this is the main disposition which are important to develop in critical thinking. So now you will take 2 minutes based on this summarize about disposition, about critical thinking, and try to identify in which one you are good and in which one you need to improve, in fact, yourself, and how you will improve tomorrow yourself in this disposition. Clear for everybody? So you have 2 minutes. In what I am good in which predisposition I need to improve myself, and how I can improve myself tomorrow. Okay, so who wants to begin? Lisa, in what you are good actually, and in what you need to improve tomorrow, and how you will improve it tomorrow.
Yeah, Professor, I would like to go into that second one about looking at situation. And according to you already mentioned me about, according to B, I can dimension from that healthcare professional satisfaction, also IT experts. and also the existing environment, which already they adopted system, and the new one system, what type of dimensions, and also that situation I think I need to explore, and it will be also very complex. I need to more simple and clear. So I think for tomorrow, it is better for me to explore this one. Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Julia, in what quality disposition you are good, and what kind of quality disposition you have to improve tomorrow?
I think I'm quite good with innovation and interdisciplinary approach and looking from different perspectives. But what I want to work on is the progestas, because that's what I mentioned in the beginning, right? When I read, I want to find ideas that support my ideas. It's quite hard to somehow differentiate if article is written about something else, and I'm trying to make it be written about something I need to be written on. So I guess that's something that I should work on, and about the being more open-minded. I think those two are going quite hand in hand. So yeah.
Okay, good. Juan?
I recognize that there are a lot of things to improve. The first one is to be open-minded, as Nisar highlight about the use of methodology and theories. And there are 2 points that I must work in, the read and apply the methodology and follow the examples, talking about methodology of research. Read and reflects about theories, and identify my personal filters and bias about the physician-patient relations. To, as Julia said, to manage the bias. And the second one is to pay attention to details. There I learned that there are a lot of software to make lexical analysis and register the data, software like NVivo, that allow me to see the collection of data and at the same time to see the details.
Okay, and Egle?
Well, I would like not only to be closed in this global value chains or resilience or disruptions research, but also to be opened to other research directions that that I would capture on the way, just to broaden my perspective, and also to explore more about resilience, as that's what I've been doing for the past few days, and even for the past hours before this lecture, I was reading on it. So I would like to improve this area.
Okay, thank you. So I had put in the chat the PPT. At the end of the lecture, you have a very short, funny test to test your critical thinking in a very, I would say, funny way. Look at it, I would say, with baby eyes, and identify how your brain can catch you in some interesting direction. So do you have questions about what we have exchanged during these 3 hours?
Yeah, Professor, there is no question, but I think it's very interesting and very informative lecture, and it's the first time for me to attend this type of lecture where I just put my critical thinkings, because before I hadn't this type of experience to use my critical thinking to look at that scenario which you already gave. So maybe I was so lazy to adopt that one and didn't respond on time, but I think it will be useful for me for future. Thank you so much for your nice presentation and lecture. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. I think we are done for this lecture. If you have any question, please do not hesitate to contact me by emails. Again, what is, I would say, when we are PhD students, if I remember my PhD time, which is a little bit longer, don't imagine that when you will defend your thesis, you will make a definitively choice, because a research career is very long and there are too many opportunities to explore, that what you did not have the opportunity to explore during your PhD, you can explore it after. It's just the beginning of the journey.
Yeah. So thank you, Ren. I really agree with Nazar that it's exceptionally useful material you provided our PhD students. So thanks a lot, and I believe we can keep in touch in case students would have some questions, right? We can formulate, and I will send to you. So probably that's it for today, and let's have a nice weekend, right?
Exactly. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Asta,
you.
I can leave here for a few minutes. Yeah. Thank you.
Waiting.
Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Professor, do you have
Yeah.
something? Okay.
Yeah, we booked with Julia some time, but Nazar,
okay.
I believe we need to book a time to talk. And I wrote you an email. Please provide me an action plan. You know how you're getting to Lithuania, and this is serious, believe me.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we need to talk. So let's book online our meeting for next week. We have consultations time, so let's book the time during this consultation hours. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Professor. Thank you. But problem is that I am trapped in bureaucratic system. But it's okay. Thank you so much. I will try.
You also have Rima contacts. So
yeah, ma'am.
email Rima. She helps students with the visas. So I believe it's a question of actions, and I need a plan. So please send me.
Professor. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Gerai, tai aš pasistengsiu labai trumpai. Iš esmės, aš tais dviem klausimais noriu pasikonsultuoti. Aš atsidarysiu tą dabar, ką aš esu padarius, tiesiog nes bus paprasčiau.
Aš tau atsiunčiau dar vieną straipsniuką. Man atrodo, jisai bus paprastesnis suprasti ir susidėlioti, ką reikia, bet kuri analizė kritinė, jinai prasideda nuo problemos, ar ne? Tai jeigu tu susiformuluoji, kokia yra problema, kurią tu analizuoji tų straipsnių pagrindų, tai paskui lengviau ir ieškoti kažko tuose straipsniuose, ar ne?
Nes, aš tą ir norėjau klausti, nes, aš dabar galvoju, taip, aš tą atsidariau. Aš kaip ir pradėjau rašyti, nors iš vis iš pradžių, kol susigaudžiau, tai aš pradėjau rašyti kaip ir literature review, bet tada gaunasi kaip ir iš 3 straipsnių, toks truputėlį bardakėlis, ne?
Matai, kas yra. Tai yra tam tikra prasme literature review, bet critical literature review, jinai susideda iš gilesnės analizės. Tai reiškia, ir kitas dalykas, mes čia darom pratimą. Tai tą nereikia pamiršti, ar ne? Tai mes pasižiūrėsim tą analitinį lygį, iš tikrųjų šita paskaita labai gera yra. Ir jūs, kai jau toliau disertacijai naudosit, be abejo, straipsnių kiekį turėsit išplėsti.
Taip. Tai aš tą ir norėjau paklausti, nes kaip rašau, tarsi introduction, aš kaip ir sakiau, aš jau esu truputėlį prieš tai dariusius tas literature review ir mes rašom tą platesnį, kaip sakant, normalų, kur teiksim straipsnį, tai man klausimas yra, kiek aš galiu naudoti čia jo, nes vis tiek aš kaip suprantu, jeigu kelsit į Ternetiną, tos susasane, tai jie paskui ar paskui nebus, kad man plagijuos mano pačios.
Bet tu man pasakyk, iš kur šitą nuostatą? Dėl to, kad tu žinai, aš tikrinu visus savo straipsnius, tikrinu per Authenticate prieš paduodama į žurnalą. Niekad gyvenime neturėjau tos problemos, kad jeigu aš patikrinau per Authenticate, kad saviplagiarizmą rašytų, žinok, taip neveikia. Bet tarp kitko, visi studentai man tą sako,
Jo.
jeigu patikrinsit, tai mano užsifiksuos, neužsifiksuoja, dėl to, kad tam reikalingas tikrinimui, žinai.
Va, nes gal tiesiog kažkaip taip gaus, kad bakalauro gal laikų mums buvo fiksuojama, kad jeigu kelia į tą sistemą, tai išsaugo ten tą darbą ir dėl to taip ir norėjau to paklausti, nes tie introduction, ten labai daug informacijos kartojasi dažnai ir tada toks gaunas, kad jeigu vienam moduliui ten pateiki, pavyzdžiui, pas mus ten yra tas kažkoks anglų kalbos, rašymas žodžių, ten reikia pateikti pastraipą, tai man kažkaip 2 kartus rašyti pastraipą nelabai noris, tai aš pateikčiau ir vienam ir kitam moduliui, bet jeigu man paskui pasakys, kad tu čia pasi plagėriau.
Ne. Tie reikalingi tam, nebent tu kur nors internete įkelsi, tai tada taip, bet jeigu internete nekeli, tai pats instrumentas.
Ta prasme, kai pateiki tos darbus per Moodle, tai ten kažkas.
Matai, čia 2 skirtingi dalykai. Pirmas punktas tai Authenticate nėra Turnitinas ir Moodle. Antras dalykas su Moodle, aš dabar tau nepasakysiu tiksliai, nes aš į Moodle nekėlu savo darbų. Tai aš tikrinu su Authenticate, kas tikrai neturi nieko bendro su galimu potencialiai užsaugojimu.
Gerai. Ir tada man klausimas dėl konkrečiai šituo atveju, kai mes tas 3 straipsnius nagrinėjom, aš vis tiek, aišku, čia rašau ryšių į tą aprašymą ir taip toliau, bet kadangi gaunasi, kad vienas straipsnis yra 9 metų, kiti 22-23, tai pas mane prie to introductiono jo labai daug yra straipsnių, kurie yra tarpiai ir ta informacija nėra nei iš to, nei iš to.
Bet matai, bėda yra tame, kad tai, ko aš prašiau parašyti kritinę analizę, 3 straipsnių.
Taip, tai čia...
Ne visų kitų.
Tai aš apie tą ir kalbu, čia yra introductionas, aš kažkaip sakau, o paskui čia šitą metodologiją jau apie tos 3 straipsnius, čia kaip juos atsirinkau, čia viską daryti.
Matai, esmė yra tame, kad mes darom pratimėlį, ne? Būtent tam, kad nebūtų didelės apimties ir čia mūsų laikas yra trumpas, ar ne? Tai mes pasiemam problemą ir tą problemą išanalizuojam 3 straipsnių kontekste, tačiau tai yra gilesnė įžvalga ir į straipsnius, ir į problemą tų straipsnių kontekste, ar ne? Tai realiai aš citavimų kitų tikrai nesitikiu. Mes kalbam apie tuos 3 straipsnius. Aišku, jeigu tu ten diskusijoje kokioje, žinai, paminėsi, kad šalia tų straipsnių dar yra ir kiti, kurie ten, sakykime, papildo, paneigia, pagrindžia ar kodėl, tai okei. Bet realiai, tai aš nenorėčiau, kad tai būtų kažkoks buvęs straipsnis, kurį tu paėmei, dar įdėjai šitos straipsnius ir man atidavai dėl to, kad man reikia konkrečiai tų 2 straipsnių gilios analizės.
Supratau, nes aš taip ir, dėl to norėjau paklausti, nes aš čia pradėjau per tą literature review eiti ir ties rezultatus aš gaunasi aprašinėjau kiekvieną tą straipsnį, ten ką aš radau, ten per vis, ir apie straipsnius, ir ten indeksavimus.
Kad tuo 3 aprašinėjai viskas fine, bet esmė yra, kad ir pats įvadas.
Tai irgi turėtų būti apie tos 3 straipsnius. Tai žodžiu, man viską, tada aš tiesiog pratrinsiu tai, ką aš tam prirašiau per daug.
Tai tu panaudosi ateityje.
Taip, aš tą į literature review 2, kur mes rašysim, turbūt sudėsiu tiesiog.
Taip.
O tada dar klausimas, tai gerai, aš dabar čia, kai rezultatus rašau, čia rezultatai yra, sakau, pirmą šiaip apžiūri tos 3 straipsnius ten iš tų kaip tą analizę, o tada čia apie keywordsus ir kiekvieną straipsnį atskirai paanalizuoju ir tada aš teisingai suprantu, kad diskusijai aš turiu juos suvesti, iš esmės, ta prasme, kas per tuos straipsnius, per kuriuos ten kampus, vadinkim, pjūvius galima.
Taip. Ir diskusijoje tada galima paminėti, kad tokie tie 3 straipsniai atspindi kažkokią mokyklą, bet yra ir kitos mokyklos, jeigu jau tu sugebi, jau padarius analizę ir sugebi jas atsekti, ar ne?
Taip. Supratau, tvarko. Ir tada dėl to limitations, jisai irgi turi ateiti tik iš tų 3 straipsnių ir iš tų 3 straipsnių tų dalių, kur jie rašo apie limitations. Ar turi būti iš savo sugalvojimo?
Ne. Pirmas dalykas, ką pateikia tie straipsniai, bet matai, kas yra tavo šito pratimo limitations. Tai yra tai, kad tu analizuoji 3 straipsnius. Tai yra tavo, ar ne? Tu kalbi, ką jie kalba, bet visų pirma, tai tu paskui sakai, o kur tavo limitations, ar ne? Ir galbūt ten kažkokį kampą paėmėjai, kažkur kirtai kampą, kažkur pridėjai kampą, ar ne? Visą tai yra tavo šito pratimo limitations.
Tai iš esmės, man tada gal šitus netgi limitations, kuriuos aš iš tų straipsnių ištraukiau, juos kelti prie turbūt diskusijos, kur aš pažiūriu, kur ten, net rezultatų.
Netgi rezultatų, taip, netgi rezultatų.
Tai gerai, tai visą šitą. Ir tada čia tik tai parašyt, kad čia yra, atsakau, tie 3 straipsniai, čia gal vėl apie tos vabajas, kur šiandien paklausiam.
Taip.
Pasirinkti buvo ne tam tikra tvarka. Tai kažkas tokio. Tai gerai tada. Ir dar, čia šiaip gal toks klausimas, aš kažko buvau pasirašęs, jeigu aš kažkur čia pasirašau, kad čia galėtų būti kaip hipotezė kažkokia atskiro tyrimo, tai man tai irgi įvardinti kaip jau prie diskusijos turbūt labiau, nu, tarsi, kad aš paanalizavus ir man kyla klausimas.
Tai klausimas, ta hipotezė kieno? Čia vieno iš tų straipsnių hipotezė?
Ne, sakau, aš tiesiog skaitydama, nu, suvedžiau, kad, nu, va, čia, žodžiu.
Jo, tai dabar truputį stop. Kur yra niuansas? Jeigu tu darai konceptualų straipsnį, o literature review yra konceptualus straipsnis, hipotezės nekeliamos, yra formuluojami propositions. Čia bendrai toks dalykas, ar ne? Dėl to, kad hipotezės yra tik tai kiekybinio straipsnio, kiekybinio tyrimo dalis. Tai tu gali kaip rezultatą formuluoti propositions, ar ne? Tu peržvelgi tris. Nu, matai, propositions yra teiginiai, kurie išplaukia iš tavo analizės ir ateityje, jeigu tu darysi kiekybinį tyrimą, tai yra pagrindas hipotezei. Bet šiame straipsnėje tai yra proposition ir tu išanalizuoji 3 straipsnius ir gale tu formuluoji propositions. Arba jeigu iš kiekvieno straipsnio išplaukia skirtingas propositions, tada rašai propositions atskirai po kiekvieno straipsnio analizės. Ne? Bet visų pirma, tai terminologija jos nemaišyk, o antras dalykas, tai yra geras rezultatas, jeigu sugebi ištraukti proposition, kuris nėra trivialus iš tų straipsnių analizės, tai labai gerai, nu taip, tai yra geras pratimas, nes tu kažką susintetini ir supranti.
Tai gerai, tai tada dėl šito man kaip ir aišku, čia biškelį reikės perdaryti. Tada dėl to keista, aš kaip ir rašiau, ar tai būtinai turi būti, na, jau su įmonėm ir taip toliau, nes kažkaip aš pagalvojau, kad nu, čia biškelį ir etikos leidimų reikėtų šitiem dalykam ir panašiai, ir tada gal galima tiesiog kažkaip universiteto platmei tą padaryti.
Matai, kaip aš tau pasakysiu, tokiems pratimėliams neimamės tų etikos komitetų leidimų, jeigu tikrai labai nori, tai mūsų KTU etikos komitetui parašyk ir jisai tau greit atsakys. Iš principo, tai bus geras pratimas. Kitas dalykas, jeigu per tą laiką nėra galimybių pakalbinti įmonės, neturi kažkokių įmonių, su kuriuom bendradarbiauji, gali imti universitetą. Tik tai tiek, kad man kas yra svarbu, kad praktiškai išbandytum atvejo metodą ir interviu, dėl to, kad kai kurie čia paskui gyvenime neprieina prie šito.
Tai viskas gerai, tada šitas kaip ir irgi aišku. Ir dar paskutinis, čia iš tikrųjų, kaip tik Rima, jinai atsintė, kad 29 bus atestacija mūsų, tai kadangi 29 pas mus ir tas atsiskaitimas, tai čia aš nežinau, jums tiesiog pagalvojau, reikia pasakyti, kad turbūt kažkaip.
Čia yra bėdelė, žinau, bet gal truputį po atestacijos pasidarysim ten, šiaip pagrindinis atestacija, man atrodo, atsiskaitimas tai 30 dieną, ten 29 yra ir nesistemic literature review.
Taip.
Tai pasitarkime iš tikrųjų, ir gal mes 30 dieną viską pasidarom ir vieną ir kitą, aišku, tas yra sudėtinga, nes dėmesys, išlaikymas taip toliau. Kita vertus galima po atestacijos, bet po atestacijos irgi yra nuovargis, ypač jūsų, nes kažkiek yra vis tiek tos baimės. Tai nežinau, kaip geriau padaryti, nes netelpam truputį per mažai gyvenime laiko. Tai nežinau, o kaip pačiai atrodo, kaip geriau po atestacijos ar 30 dieną penktadienį sudėti.
Man atrodo, kad gal būtų geriau penktadienį, bet kažkaip gal tada 2 dalis daryti, pavyzdžiui, ten rytiniai daly, sakykime, daryti tą tik tai literature review, literature review, o tada ten pietų kažkokią pertrauką truputėlį galvą pravedinti ir tada antrą dalį.
Gerai, aš pasižiūrėsiu šitą, dar su kitais susirašysim, parašysiu visiems laišką ir tada sukeisim. Žinau šitą dalyką, tik tai tiek, kad mes dar 20 dieną priėmimą turėsim. Tai.
Ojei. Supuolė viskas. Arba gal galima paankstinti, iš tikrųjų, tai tengi mes turim tų paskaitų, ar neturim, ar tą pačią savaitę padaryti kelias dienas.
Ne, vietoj konsultacijas gal galim pasidaryti, persitat neformaliai. Jo, čia tarp to gera mintis, aš pažiūrėsiu konsultacijų laiką ir gal konsultacijų metu pasidarysim atsiskaitą.
Tas 2 dienas, tai jos nieko nepakeis iš tikrųjų.
Taip.
Tai gerai, tai tvarkoju, ačiū tada jums ir tada bandau užtvarkyti taisyti.
Tvarkoju. Tai dėkui tada jau.
Ačiū visą.
Iki.